Hey, what's up, guys? It's Art Book Addiction here, and we're here with a new artist journey video. So today, we're going to be talking about what is talent exactly, right? So we've talked about, talent versus hard work, right? And we all know that, like, talent isn't everything, and the discussion around talent has become kind of like, always about hard work versus talent, right? But today I want to talk about what talent really is, right? And like its complexities, okay? Because talent isn't just a like one factor thing, okay? You could be talented in one regard and not talented in another regard, right? Um, I think that people tend to judge talent as more of like a flat status than a multi-dimensional, like object. You know what I mean? Something that you could be good at one thing and be worse at another thing. But like in terms of art, right? Like you could be good at shape, okay, but you could be bad at line, right? But from the outset, people just think, if you made good pieces, that you're just straight up talented, right? And we can talk about the stigmatization of talented people as well, right? So that's what we talk about today. Before we start the video, please hit that like, hit that subscribe, check out my Prince and Patreon if you want to support the channel. Consider becoming a channel member and join the Discord. Okay, and with that, let's get into it. I know most of you probably wouldn't consider yourselves talented, right? And some of you would consider yourselves talented, but if you look at it from an outsider's perspective, I would think that any normal person who doesn't draw will consider you talented, okay? And vice versa, those who you consider better than you consider them talented, right? So talent is kind of like a relative thing, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're better than me, right? Most of the time, or like, you know what I mean? Like, but that's not really the scale we should really be judging on. You get what I'm saying? Talent should be judged on a speed basis. Okay? So I've talked about this a lot. That talent isn't necessarily skill, it's the speed in which you learn a skill, okay, or get good at something, okay? Hard work, obviously will just, that is consistent and will chug you along at a certain rate. Talent is just simply how fast that rate is, okay? So someone without talent can get to the same place as someone with talent, but the person with talent will get there faster, okay? So it's literally just about time and speed, okay? Throughout my life, people have told me that I have quite a bit of talent, okay? I've been, if anything, I've getting a lot of shit for being talented, right? Mostly from other art students, right? They'll be like, oh, you're just talented, you know what I mean? So, in a strange way, those with talent actually can be ostracized in a way, you know what I mean? Maybe also it's because I have an intimidating presence. I speak a lot, and like I look scary. You know what I mean? I look scary. So there's I think there's that stigmatization. I think if you if you're someone who is naturally talented, there's definitely gonna be a little bit of some jealousy going around. Maybe some like shit talk behind your back, right? A lot of like well, they just think they're you know what I mean? So like from a person who has been considered talented, right? You're gonna get a lot of shit, right? Like at least in my experience. I don't know if that's like some people will praise you. Usually people it's outside of it's outside of our world. You know what I mean? But the people in our world will usually I guess punch up. You get what I'm saying, right? That because someone is more skilled, that you are more willing to give people shit about it, right? And so there is a stigmatization of talent, right? I have a story of one of my friends in school, right, who really good, super like, and he's like super cool, right? And I think that's where like it's a great example, right? I had a friend who was in game art, right? Super talented guy, right? Like he was good like on the artist scale, right? And then he went into game art, right, where it's mostly like game developers, right? People who aren't very good at drawing, okay? And he was like clearly the best one, okay? Like easily the best one, right? And like I don't know why they did this, but at the end of the year, right, for that particular class, they did a vote for like who did the best art, right? And everybody voted him last, okay? And he was clearly the best, okay? It's not even like opinion based. It's like someone who could draw versus people who can't draw, right? So it's like it's not even fair at that point, right? But they all had this spite towards him because he was good, okay, right? And from what I've gathered from the people that I've talked to who are talented, who have skill, right, this seems to be the case. Even if you're a really cool guy, right? Even if you're not like me, who, you know, I have like, I'm kind of dominant, I'm kind of intimidating, right? I'm outspoken. So I feel like there are those things that kind of like, you know, can lend people to be more discriminating and hateful towards me, right? But there are people who are just like I don't even know how someone could hate this person, right? Where they will get hate, okay? That's just the case because jealousy is a real thing, okay? So if you're a talented person and you've experienced this, right, don't worry about it. It's just people being petty, right? I'm not gonna say it won't affect you, right? Because, you know, nobody likes to be the guy, right? But that's unfortunately what happens when you're in the hot seat. When you're in the hot seat, people are gonna, you know, give you shit over everything, right? Maybe the teachers won't because they see the potential in you, right? But people who consider themselves on the same like plane, right, will, okay? So stigmatization of talent is a real thing. Don't think that it's not, and like don't think of yourself as like you know, like, oh, like, well, you should feel blessed about your talent, but don't think of it as like a thing to be ashamed of, or like, you know, try to hide it, or like try to appease to the people because you're talented. But like, because no matter what you do, you can't stop being good, right? Or you can't like pare yourself down like art wise, because then you're just weakening yourself, right, and your output. But the stigmatization of art is real, okay? So with that being said, let's talk about the other dimensions of talent, okay? Right? So like I said, talent in one thing doesn't necessarily mean talent in another, right? So in the field of art, there are, in my eyes, basically two big camps, okay? There is shape and line. I've discussed this before, but basically some people are better attuned to drawing line work, and there are people who are more attuned to doing silhouette work, okay, or render, okay? Let's just say they're better at render, okay? And they'll be like, so someone who's better with line will do line work better. They're better with inking. They're better with black and white, okay? Someone who's better with shape, okay, can do shapes really well, can do color really well, and render really well, right? So knowing which side of the spectrum you are will show which one you have more of a talent in, right? So if you see someone who is really good in one regard, right, they may not necessarily be as good in the other regard, okay? Or one camp versus the other camp, right? So that means that talent is not perfectly symmetrical, okay? Talent is, you know, is shaped based on the person, okay? And of course, like what they practice, the medium they like, right? So when you are judging yourself or judging others, understand that you know, someone may be talented in one regard, but they may not be talented in another regard. Okay, so a great example, right? There was this artist I knew, um, not very good at drawing, not very good at fine art stuff, not very good at creating, like you see a thing, you draw it. Okay, the technical aspects, right? However, right, he was really good with what is it called? I think Illustrator, or he was good at making like designs for uh, like logos, okay, or like symbols. You get what I'm saying, right? He was really really good with InDesign, and when I saw his work in that, I was like, whoa, like because I viewed him as someone without talent, okay, as someone without skill, right? And it kind of like changed my view on things, right? And I was like, well, at least he's good at that. You know what I mean, right? So it's like, when you're out of your element, right, you could appear bad, right? You could appear as someone who is not skilled in what they do, right? And so the natural reaction is to just do what you do well, like um, for that class, even though it may not be applicable, right? And that actually can harm your learning process, okay? Because like sometimes your talent can actually stop you from learning other things, right? Which is, you think that's a like whoa, but because you have your talent tied with your ego, right? And sometimes your ego will always want to impress, okay? And when you do that, you are closing yourself off from learning, okay? And what you want to do is to learn all the skills to help, bring up those weaknesses, right? Not only do you want to practice what you're good at, but you also want to pick up your weaknesses as well, okay? Because when you have a weakness and you run into a situation where you need to be able to do something, and it's in a weaker part of your skill set, then it's going to show in the artwork, and then the artwork itself is going to suffer as a result, okay? So be careful with protecting what you imagine as your image as an artist, okay? Be willing to be bad is what I'm saying, okay? Because when you're learning a new skill, you're obviously going to be bad at it from the start, okay? So what I'm trying to say is allow yourself to be bad, okay? Allow what you perceive yourself to be as an artist to just fall away, because that doesn't really matter, okay? What you imagine yourself as an artist, as a skilled person, it doesn't matter, okay? Because, so for example, like I'm someone who's really good at fine art, okay? I see something, I can draw it, okay? I'm really good at looking at a thing, drawing it, okay? I'm very good at copying, okay? Now, that wasn't the same when it came to designing, okay? To character design and drawing like especially like cartoon characters. I had no idea how to draw cartoon characters, right? But so what did I do, right? Did I, instead of drawing cartoon characters for the assignment, I'm going to draw a little bit more realistic characters, right? See, that is the solution of someone who is afraid, okay? Someone who doesn't want to appear with bad artwork, right? And I've said, no, what I'm going to do is expose myself, okay? And be willing to go through the teacher's process and learn what they learn and understand what they're trying to teach me, right? By, drawing what they're saying, trying my best at making cartoons, even though I'm bad at it, right? And, the drawings, I'll be honest, they weren't great at first, okay? They were not very good, okay? But as I continued to do it, as I followed the teacher's process, as I started to understand what they meant by drawing through, and not just kind of drawing a shape one time, drawing it out and then doing this, trying to find the form, trying to find the character inside of the sketch, right? I started to understand, and I was like, oh, this is how you do it, okay? This is how you draw a character from your mind, onto the page, and make them charming and make them, and it's not that I'm not good at it now, right? But I know that it's still for me kind of like a okay, well, you gotta work it, you gotta, what I mean. Some people, they could just like, a character done, right? I can't do that. Okay, I have to like draw them out. Okay, and then what about this? It's like, oh, is that working? No. Okay, well then, like, try this. Okay, try this instead. You know what I mean? It's still a process, right? Though I could see someone who is like a natural cartoonist, right, and they'll go and then boom, character, right? But if I draw it out, right, and put in the work, I could get a similar or better result. Okay, because I spent the time to actually draw through and design the character and give a shit, right? So that's another thing. Like, you should give a shit about art that you may not necessarily be good at, okay? Because you want to, again, bridge the gap, okay? So that when you go back to what you're really good at, you're gonna be fantastic at that, and you're gonna have the skill set from the original, right? So another example, right? Originally, I was in Viz Dev, okay, or visual development, okay, which is like concept art, doing animation stuff, doing video game stuff, doing digital stuff. I drew almost exclusively digital, right? In my early years, not throughout school, like that's just throughout school I was doing that. And of course I would have traditional classes where I would be much better at, right? And because of my hand problems, I had to go back to doing traditional stuff, which I have a natural talent in, right? But I realized a lot of the things I learned from Viz Dev, I could use in my current art, right? A lot of the skills that I used back in the day, I completely still use now in my current artwork. So if you are finding yourself kind of stuck, right, or kind of like just drawing at the same level, right, at a certain point, you might want to try doing something that you're uncomfortable with, right? And like, learning that, and really like when I say learning, I mean like you're gonna have to do this for like a month or like 2 months, right? And like really get into it, really get into the weeds of it, right? And as a result, when you go back to your work, you're gonna see your work in a new light. You're gonna see like, oh, now I can implement this new skill. And then once you put it in, you're like, whoa, I never thought that my work could use this part of artwork into it, right? Into in this talent that I never knew, right? So like, for example, okay, like, you're painting, right? You get really good at painting, right? I'm naturally really good at painting, right? I suck with ink work, okay? So what I did was I made it a point to really work hard at ink and get good with it, understand line work, right? I was really terrible with line weight, by the way. And I started getting good with line work, right? And then when I went back to painting, right, and I started doing like there are times where you need a really nice fine edge, right, or you need to put a line on the edge to differentiate it from the background, right? I started doing that, and I was like, oh, this is just like when I was doing ink, right? And I have that skill now, and boom, now it improves the work that I have now, okay? So that is where you want to kind of stray away from your natural talent, okay? And be willing to observe other skills, right? But the thing is, okay, and here's another aspect, okay? I don't say you have to do this, okay? But from my experience, okay, when you are exploring other things, right? Eventually you will probably go back to what you're best at, okay? Because there's an exploration phase, okay? And then there is the I need to hone in, and I need to start working, okay? I need to lock in, okay? And when you lock in, you're usually trying to work with what you're best at. And when you're working with what you're best at, that's when all of the learning is gonna really come in. It's where you're gonna start understanding what talent really means, okay? And what talent really means is the culmination of your learning and your natural ability, right, and your hard work, okay? And you combine all those together, and those are what talent become, okay? And then talent, you start to realize that talent isn't such a, like, one size fits all thing, okay? And you're gonna understand, and then so when you see, other people talk about talent, talk about like natural ability and skill, and oh, I can do that, right? You'll go like, well, you could, I mean, you could actually do it if you put on the hours, tried really hard, and got good, right? um and I think this applies to many fields, right? The only time that I feel like it may not apply is like with cooking, right? Because some people just suck at cooking, right? And like they'll never get good, right? But they could get better, right? um, but understand that talent isn't everything, but if you do have talent, appreciate it, and understand that there are more facets to talent than what you initially would think, okay? So you have a talent in one thing, it's your duty to work on your weaknesses, okay? It's your duty to kind of like make those other things better so that your talent can really, push beyond, right? Because your weaknesses will limit you, will gate you from pushing your talent to where it can like actually be its full potential, okay? um and you know understand that there's a stigmatization of talent. And if you are someone who sees somebody else and you're like, oh, they're so much more talented than you, right? um Understand that behind the scenes there is a lot of work being put in, okay? There is usually, when someone is really really good, it's not by a mistake, it's not by like a gift of god that they are that good, okay? It's usually a lot of hard work, okay? A lot of crazy dedication that maybe you're not even privy to, okay? Right? um like I remember in in this anime, Gunbuster, right? There was our main character, Noriko. She was like looking at like one of the top people, right? And the top person kind of like was giving her shit. You know what I mean? Right? And saying like oh, you don't train enough. You don't do, you're not disciplined, right? And then like she would complain and say like, oh, well, she's just talented. Well, she just has this natural ability that I'm never gonna have, right? And then like the coach guy, like was like, oh yeah. And then he like brought her to where the other girl trains, right? And you see her just training by herself, like locked in, right? Like going up and down the stairs like a maniac, okay, with like weights on and shit, right? And he and then he goes to her, is like, is that talent right there? Is that just talent, right? And then that's when the main character realizes that like, oh, this person actually has trained way harder than I did, has put way more dedication into it. And yes, maybe they have natural ability, but they are putting in like 3 times the work that I am, right? And so if you see someone who is much better than you, like look at them and realize that in like, I would say like 90% of the cases, they are just working way harder, okay? And most of the time I think it's someone who is trying to, they realize they had talent and they're trying to unleash their full potential, okay? And that's the mentality you want to have, okay? And when you so if you're someone with talent, okay, which I think all of you are, okay, because like, to regular people you are talented, right? You have a talent, you need to put in the hard work, right? You need to work on those weaknesses, right? And you need to let go of your jealousy of others, okay? And look at them and realize that they're putting in the hard work, and if anything, they are someone to aspire to and to mimic, okay? And not mimic as in their drawings, but mimic as in their work ethic, their attitude towards their practice, right? And their well-roundedness, okay? And understand that it took years and years to get where they are, okay? I think that's partly the reason why people look down on AI so much, is because they didn't spend that time, they didn't put in the hard work, they didn't put in the skill, they didn't have talent, and so they use the cheat code, right? So you have to be very careful with how you view talent and how you use the word talent for someone, for yourself, and against yourself and others, okay? It's a very, very like easy track to look at talent as something negative, okay? Don't look at it like that, okay? Talent is just the speed at which someone learns. It's literally just speed, okay? You could get the same distance, but in a longer time, okay? And that's okay, because you could be faster in another regard that's faster than the other person, right? And you're like, whoa, you know, it's just, I'm just good at this thing versus that thing, right? But you want to be good at both things. You want to get good at both things, right? And so that, like, you know, at a certain point you will have zero weaknesses, okay? I think that's always the goal, right? It's not like, always for me, when it comes to art, it's not to be the best, right? It's to, I mean, of course, there's, you know, you have the desire to be the best, right? Or to be one of the best, right? But it's to have no weaknesses, okay? To have no spot where something could be jammed into your work and it's like, oh, well, they're not good at that. You know what I mean? Having no weaknesses is better than being the tippity top, right? And the people who are at the tippity top usually have no weaknesses, right? So whether you're a person with talent or without talent, or you consider yourself without talent, right? Because you actually might be talented, you may not know because you haven't tried the right thing yet, right? It doesn't really matter, okay? Talent is just a word for labeling something. Talent is just a word for labeling something that's much more complex than what people are saying. And usually talent is a word used as a way to lower someone, okay? Or heighten someone to a status that is not really indicative of what the real thing is, okay? You know, skill is always going to be the king, right? And how fast you get there does matter, right? But at the end of the day, talent isn't a flat thing. It's multifaceted. There are a lot of aspects to it, okay? And there are a lot of things that, you know, may not be seen and are actually not actually an advantage to you when it comes to talent. And there are things that you think that the talented person has, but they don't have, okay? But they just put in more work, you know what I mean? So you don't really know their story until you talk to them, until you ask them, until you see their practice, until you see the way they approach something, right? So don't judge too fast. Don't disregard someone who's better than you just because you think that they're talented, right? And vice versa, you know, don't disregard someone because you believe they have no talent, right? Because in the art world, anything's at play, okay? Again, it's not a perfect sphere. It's a lumpy ball where something may be beautiful and something may be ugly, right? But what you want to do is to round it out, smooth it out, okay? So it's like, so that you are a well-rounded artist, okay? And that your talent can now flourish to the maximum potential that it is, okay? Because it has no weaknesses, right? Yeah. So I think we're gonna end the video here, guys. Please, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like, hit that subscribe, check out my Prince of Patreon if you want to support the channel. Consider becoming a channel member, join that Discord, all that bullshit, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks a lot.